Hi you guys, welcome back. My name is Carrie Penny. I am the Happy Crafty Homemaker, and today I'm going to be showing you guys how I knit my basic increase shawl. If you've been with me for any length of time, you will have seen this shawl repeatedly. I made a number of them last year. I just completed one a few weeks ago. I actually used it as part of my visuals for my latest knitting as a crocheter video. It is the most basic triangular shawl you could possibly construct. It is an adventure as you go kind of project. You can make choices about which increases you want to do, what basic stitch patterns you want to use. You can do this in stockinette stitch, garter stitch, seed stitch, any of your flat knit purl combinations. This would not really work in a rib stitch. You can use garter on the outside, stockinette on the inside. You can use knit in the front and back or yarn overs at any place that I'm doing either one of those. You can also use a make one left, make one right increase. This is 100% do it, you do you boo kind of shawl. This is not a fast and hard pattern. The tools you will need is any ball of yarn you want to work with. In this case, I'm using a Red Heart Super Saver Chunky. This calls for a 10.5 US needle. So I will be using my 10.5, 6.5 millimeter Knitter's Pride Zing interchangeables. I do like my zings, all right. They're a little blunter than the Chalgoo, but they get the job done. You will need 2 standard knitting stitch markers, and you will also need some form of a movable stitch marker. In this case, I'm using a split ring marker. You could use a progress keeper. You could use one of those plastic safety pins. This is up to you. This will be used to mark what side is the side you do your increases from. These two are to mark your center stitch. So I am going to pause this as I finally got the introduction down, and now we will start the tutorial. Okay, on to the knitting. I am not even going to tell you guys how many times I have started this video now, but here we are. We have our 3 stitches. First thing is we're going to knit into the front and back of the first stitch. And turn that into 2 stitches. We're going to yarn over. So that's our first 2 stitches increased. Put on our stitch marker. We are going to knit our second stitch, or knit our center stitch. Add our second marker. So now we're using both ring markers to mark that center stitch. Now we're going to yarn over and then knit into the front and knit into the back of that stitch. Sorry, my fingers are getting all kinds of in the way. I'm trying to keep it as low as possible, keep it in frame and everything else, but why I'm talking you through what I'm doing too. So we have 1 stitch increased here. The yarn over is an increase. Yarn over is an increase, and we've turned 1 stitch into 2 there. So what this is going to do is give us a center eyelet on either side, a row of eyelets on either side of this center stitch, while also increasing at the edges. This is going to give a very even, gradual increase to the shawl. On the even rows, you do have the option to increase these outer 2 stitches as well. It will change the shape. You're going to have a much faster increase to your shawl so that the point won't come down quite as long. So depending on the shape you want, you can go either way with that. So your increase would be 4 on one row, 2 on 4 on your odd rows, 2 on your even rows. That is up to you, how you want to do it. Like I said, this is 100% a choose your own adventure kind of pattern. For me, what I'm going to do is actually stick with my normal pattern, which is no increases on the even rows. So I'm going to turn my needle. For this first stitch, now that we've established a stitch here, I am going to slip one as if to purl, bring my yarn back to the back. I'm going to knit the knit stitch, knit the purl, or knit the yarn over, slip my marker over, knit my center stitch, slip my marker over, knit my yarn over, knit, and knit. So now we have 3 stitches on either side of our center stitch. And you will already see that you have closed the yarn overs over here. Now, turn the work. There is no easy way for me to do this. I am sorry, this is a all thumbs kind of mess. Okay, so now we're back on an odd side row. This is row 3. This is where I'm going to deploy my split ring marker. Hopefully that won't clang too much. I'm going to mark this side as the side I will do increases on. So when I see this split ring marker under my first stitch, I know, okay, this is an increase row. That way, if I stick this in a project bag for 6 months, I will know this is my increase side. So we're going to slip one as if to purl, bring the yarn back to the back, knit into the front and back of that stitch. That's increase number 1. Knit, yarn over, slip the marker, knit, slip the marker, yarn over, knit, knit into the front and back. Ooh, missed that back. And then knit that final stitch. And that's really all there is to it. You're just going to continue, in this case, slip as if to purl with the yarn in the front, knit, knit. This is just a knit across the row. These markers, I repeatedly accidentally get my little ball tangled there, so I do kind of swing my yarn to the front, especially when I'm knitting at an awkward angle. So we've knit across here. Now this would be a good place if you decide you want to have your first, say, 4 stitches in garter stitch and your center in stockinette. This would be where you would start to make that transition. So if you want garter stitches on your edge, this would be where you start to think about changing into stockinette for these center stitches. You can do 3, 4, 5 stitches depending on how big you're planning on this shawl to be. For me, I'm going to just keep going all knits. I like squishy. We're going to slip. This is our marker row, so we know this is an increase row. We're on an odd number row. So we're going to knit into the front and back. Make that 2 stitches there. Knit. Whoop. Knit. Knit. Yarn over. Slip your marker. Knit. Slip your marker. Yarn over. Knit to your last 2 stitches. Now you have the last 2 stitches. We're going to knit into the front and back. Knit. Now remember, at any increase point, you can either do a knit in the front and back, yarn over, whatever you decoratively want those increased stitches to be. This is a you do your own thing kind of pattern. So we're going to slip that first stitch as if to purl. By slipping that first stitch, you're just giving yourself a nice edge. Once I have a little bit more of the work established, I will show you what that edge looks like. This is that non-increase row. So you can see where my eyelets are here, and I've just closed up that next one. Turn your work. Mark a row. So this is an increase. Slip one as if to knit. Knit into the front and back. Whee! Knit. Wow. I am definitely having a lot of stitch stutter here, trying to do this through the camera viewfinder instead of watching my hands. I have 0 depth perception, which is really weird to me. All right, we're to our last 2 stitches. So we're going to do our next increase, which is a knit into the front and back. And you can already see where that's starting to shape. All right, so this is just a knit across. Slip that first stitch. And once again, this is just another example of how I knit exactly like a crochet. And I did forget to mention at the beginning of this video that my needles are the Knitter's Pride Zings, but my cable is actually a Knit Picks cable. I do tend to prefer the Knit Picks cable. It does have some memory. It is a little wonky, but it is better than the Knitter's Pride cables are. Okay, so now we've got a couple rows established here. You can see how it looks like a knit stitch going down the side. That's what happens when you slip that first stitch as if to purl when you're knitting. So you've got this nice squishy fabric here in the center. You have these little eyelets down here. Oof, sorry about that. Get this down on the cable here. See, that is really annoying. So here you go. You've got everything coming out right there. So when you go to weave in this end, generally I will kind of bridge it here just a little bit. Another alternative, if you want to do eyelets but want the spine to be a little bit thicker, you can do your yarn over 1 stitch over. So it's 3 stitches in the center. That's, one of those you can do moments. I wouldn't go any further than 3 stitches out, but if you wanted to have 3 stitches in the center, that is a perfectly acceptable option. I always kind of dig just the pop of lace work right there. But that's your shawl. That's all there is to this. This is a super simple pattern. You don't even have to really memorize anything because you have this marker right here. You know what side is your increase side. So when you're working down from this side, when you start with that split ring marker, that's an increase row. And if you stop in the middle of a row, you can always look back to the beginning of the row and say, oh, we were increasing here. Ask me why I know to put that marker there. But that's all there is to this. I'm going to do a couple more rows, get a little bit more distance on this, and then we'll come back and I will show you not the finished object, but where we are on it. Okay, you guys. So here we are. We're now a couple yards into the shawl pattern. You can see very clearly the shape of the pattern. You can't see. Oh, goodness, that is so loud. I'm sorry, I can't stand the sound of needles hitting the table like that, but I just don't know how else to do this. Oh, this is such a train wreck. So here's you can tell my working yarn's right here, so my next row is going to be another increase row. You can very clearly see my yarn overs here at the spine. Now this is a fairly chunky yarn on a very standard needle. Once again, you can make your own adventure. You can go way up on your needle size and make this very open, lacy, light. You can do what I did, which is going for a little bit more of a denser fabric. I mean, this is really about as simple as you can get in doing a triangle shawl. I'm gonna try to tilt the camera up here so you can get a good idea of what the angle is like. So you can see this is a fairly standard triangle shawl angle. Now with blocking, you can pull this down and stretch this out and really shape it how you want it. But this is doing the 4 increases on the odd rows, 0 increases on the even rows. And, you could have eyelets going here and here. You could have the whole thing solid. That's 100% up to how you want to do it. So when your shawl reaches its finished length and you have the size that you want it to be, it's as big as you want it to be, as small as you want it to be. Like I said, this could very easily be one of those bandana cowls. Once you reach the size you want, you are going to do some form of a loose or stretchy bind off. So if you search stretchy bind offs, there are sewn bind offs, there's Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off, there's it's called like the Norwegian or something like that bind off. I think that's another sewn bind off. You want to ensure that this edge stays loose so you don't pucker the outer edge of your shawl and tighten it beyond your stitches. Now, you can just go up 2 needle sizes and loosely bind off these stitches standard too. But I do tend to do some form of a stretchy bind off. You can also do an I-cord bind off. This is another one of those places you can pick your own adventure. So this is really more a recipe than a pattern here. But yeah, you can totally pick what kind of bind off you want and what kind of shape you want this to have. So getting this far with my chunky yarn or bulky size 5 yarn, this total has taken me maybe half an hour now from the time I cast it on to where we are. I mean, you tell it's really barely used any of the yarn here. I just basically used the mini skein that popped out of the center. So this is, excuse me, I also finished my drink, so I don't have anything else to keep my throat clear with. From here, you can make it any size, from, you know, a giant full wrap triangle shawl, a shawlette, a scarf. This is whatever you want. Also at this size, what you can do is you have a couple of different options, but from about this size, if you somehow extend your stitches in a line off of each corner here, you also have a headscarf option. But this basic triangle shape is great for so many things. I hope that kind of helps you out a little bit and helps you to see what I mean. Like, this is there is no pattern for it. It's just do your version of increases in the shape you want it to be. Now, if we had increased in the 4-2 pattern, instead of having this shape where everything is kind of in a tight angle, it would have come out a little bit wider here. So we would have had a wider versus deeper shape. So once again, that's a pick your own adventure. This works with any yarn, any needle. You can do gauge swatches or just dive right in, which is what I did here. For this yarn, I probably would have gone up at least to an 11, if not a 13, US size 13 needle. Just because this is a very dense yarn, but once I get the steam blocked and washed, it would be fine. So I hope that this was useful. If you have any questions, please leave them down below, or don't hesitate to reach out to me on Instagram or through my emails. But I love you guys, and I will see you real soon. Okay, guys, so last clip here. So I did go ahead and work up a swatch with the 4-2 style increases. So you can see how much wider that is as it grows. These are both the same amount of eyelet rows long. Here's kind of an overhead comparison of how those shapes change if you add that extra increase to the even rows. This is the exact same kind of yarn on the exact same needle, just with 2 increases on the even rows versus only the 4 increases on the odd rows. And I added those to the edges. And sorry about the needles clanking. There's not a whole lot I can do about that. But you can see even stacked up, it's harder to... Once again, this is just so hard to show you guys. On the needle, it's still kind of curving there a little bit, but hopefully that gave you a little bit of an idea of what the 2 increase styles change from just 4 increases on the odd rows, 4 on the odd, 2 on the even. I hope this was helpful for you guys. I love you, and I will see you guys real soon.